Robert Arthur Aikens. It can be said that the true wealth of a community is not confined to its history, its coffers, or its geographical riches. Wealth is also found in that by which a community is truly defined. Its people. You, volunteers, coaches, conveners, and organizers. Those having pride in their town, who give of their time every day to make this place better. Our third inductee today was a stakeholder in this wealth and the pride in this area. And Bob Aikens knew everybody. His was the voice of Lindsay for 50 years. Robert Arthur Aikens was born to May and Ernie just up the road at Ross Memorial Hospital. They lived at first at 52 Queen Street. It wouldn't be long before the family packed up and moved to the house next door at 50 Queen Street. Ernie and May would remain in that house, and then May, and then finally Bob, returning to his boyhood home until the house became too much for him. His life ended as it began, tethered to Lindsay and the Kawartha Lakes. This was his world. There was nothing in his childhood that hinted at either a career behind the mic or involvement in sport. For a time, he sold dew worms from the driveway. He rode the old co-op truck making deliveries. He sold Silverwood's ice cream for a time. He was a pin boy at Bolaway Lanes. But akin to their move to the house next door, his vocation turned out to be just across the street from the high school, in that grand old heritage building that houses the radio station. Classmate Karl Henshaw, who is here with us today and is responsible for the display that you see at the back of the room, well, Karl was already there and thought Bob should give it a try. Bob first cracked the mic in 1968, and his unaffected, folksy style was embraced by area listeners. Czechs in Peterborough liked him too, and he graced the halls of TV Hill for a year or two until CKLY brought him back to be their program director and midday host. As ever, Bob Aikens never strayed too far from home. From the beginning, Bob maintained that a radio station should mirror the community it serves. And he saw that it did. From farm futures and obituaries to the trading posts, if you had a combine for sale or looking for a set of hubcaps, he was your guy. Broadcasts from the Academy Theater or the Fiddle and Step Dance Contest from Bob Cajun. Radio Bingo, the radio auction, live coverage of the Santa Claus Parade. The examples of his community spirit, diplomacy, and quiet commitment to chronicle the town over the 910 airwaves are numerous and varied. And to many of us who were there, Bob Aikens was the radio station and the town of Lindsay personified. He was also known for his hockey broadcasts, coming as they did at the end of a 14-hour workday that began with office work in the morning, the daily recipe on his midday show, that's 1 egg yolk, just 1, not 2, 1. Working on Sunday reveries for Mackey's in the afternoons, and at long last, the call of the winning goal in overtime in a drafty arena late into the evening. If there was ever a Swiss Army knife of the airwaves, that was Bob Aikens. And broadcasting wasn't his only pursuit. He owned Fenland Lanes for a time, and later was a partner in a driving school. But his passion for broadcasting could never eclipse the passion he held for Lindsay itself, and Fenland Falls, and Bob Cajun, Dunsford, Coboconk, the entire region. Bob's commitment was in lending his support to everything and anything that was going on. A builder, in the truest sense of the word. This was no more true than his support of sport and his long-time tenure with this organization. Bob's Uncle John was the respected MPP and Minister of Tourism and Recreation in the David Peterson government and served as a founding catalyst for the Lindsay and District Sports Hall of Fame. His nephew Bob was involved from the beginning and continued to serve proudly with this august hall right to the end. Now, what was amazing about Bob, as most know, was his complete lack of athletic prowess. He couldn't swing a hammer or a bat to save himself. But he excelled on the sidelines. Bob Aikens was the consummate cheerleader. And therein lay the foundation of his profound generosity, his commitment to the community in spite of his own athletic shortcomings. And he threw his support behind the teams and the towns that comprise the city of Kawartha Lakes like few did. In service to this organization, he remained the de facto MC during the annual Induction Gala and served on both the nominations committee and the board of directors. And he was just a good guy. Kind, funny, generous, with the biggest heart, unpretentious, unhurried. Bob Aikens was never, ever, ever in a hurry. The stories are legion. There was the time when he was summoned from the Kiwanis Arena between periods to fix the station owner's TV, which was in the matrimonial bedroom, with Mrs. McNabb languishing in bed, waiting for the picture to come back. True story. Somehow Bob got things working and made it back to the arena in time for the third period. That story deserves its own page. There was also the time when Bob and Kevin Eustis, who's also with us today, were broadcasting a Lindsay Bears game in the early 90s. It was a road game, but close enough to home that the opposing fans could pick up the CKLY broadcast. Fair and unbiased to a fault, Bob and Kevin nonetheless drew the ire of the opposing team's fans who didn't take too kindly to their coverage and approached them in a menacing fashion, demanding on-air retractions or else. Well, as it turned out, the two sitting ducks caught a break when the goons caught wind of a better fight in the dressing room down the hall, and they took a rain check. Bob and Kevin made a hasty retreat. There were also those occasions after CKLY became Y92 and then Bob FM when Bob Aikens was approached by listeners offering comments because, as one could only assume, it was his station now. Why else would they call it Bob? The respect for Bob Aikens is also mirrored in his colleagues, those of us who worked with him, were mentored by him, who had the privilege of calling him a friend. Many are with us today, and you'll meet them momentarily. We learned about commitment and community at his knee. Commitment he lived and personified on so many different levels. He famously secured a doctor's note one time for release from hospital to call a Pete's game for your TV. He broadcast what turned out to be a barn burner of a game, after which he went right back to the hospital to resume treatment. That goes beyond commitment. His health took a toll in his later years. As most know, it is our understanding that he had a bypass in 2006. He battled pneumonia in 2010. His kidneys failed. He was on dialysis for 12 years. But those hardships did nothing to diminish his enthusiasm for the town of Lindsay, the city of Kay Lakes, and those friends and neighbors who call this area home. Nothing gave Bob Aikens more pleasure than to promote and support local townsfolk and their events in the town and the region that he loved and served so well. He was never the player, but he was forever your MVP, behind the scenes and behind the microphone, promoting your scores, your sponsors, your milestones. airtime for your fundraisers, your tournaments, your awards banquets, and all your winners, big and small. Bob Aikens was more than a builder. He was a tireless advocate who was in everyone's corner. That kind of generosity is what adds to the wealth of a community, and this region is richer for it. If my colleagues would join us on the podium now, if you would, gentlemen. In closing, a few of us have begun to gather at least once a year in a group loosely dubbed the Bob Aikens Memorial Society to hoist a beverage and swap stories in homage to our fallen colleague. Our uniform is the plaid, the often favored, and we are honored today as a group of his broadcast colleagues to gather on this riser as a metaphor to the closing scene of the film Dead Poets Society. We are the students, standing atop our desks in salute to our teacher, our captain, and our champion. And we are honored as a group to usher through the goalposts and into the Lindsay District Sports Hall of Fame in the category of builder, Robert Arthur Aikens. I should say that Bob Aikens would be so proud of this moment, and he would hate the attention. He really would. All right, thank you.
Yeah, he says.
All right, do you want to come up and get a picture too? Come on up. Angela?
Kevin, you might look tall in this picture. I'll go down in front like the goalie. There we are.
We all get peek through. That was really nicely done.
Should mention up on stage our broadcast colleagues, Dave Illman, who you know, you listen to him every single morning on Bob FM, Kevin Eustace, Karl Henshaw, and Andrew Weston were here with us today.